This is Tina McElroy, Ansa. I'm here with two old chicks who know a lot of shit. And my partner, Wanda Lloyd. Hey, Wanda, my friend of 50 some odd years and freshman college roommates, and we live to tell the story. How you doing, Wanda?
I'm doing good, Tina, but whoo, have we not had a busy couple of weeks?
We have it, woo child, as they say. We have indeed. We've had a great couple of we had a great month. I've had a couple of really magical weeks. That's what I call them. I'm still in a magical week, but it means a lot of work and a lot of moving around, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I was in Savannah to see you.
You sure were for about maybe 5 minutes.
It felt like that. It was just a day, but we got a lot into it. We ate together. We looked at places, and we still had time for me to do my presentation.
Yeah. So I have to say, Tina did this wonderful presentation on Zora Neale Hurston, who is an author that we kind of learned about or discovered when we were in college at Spelman, and we were both English majors, and we just sort of fell in love with Zora Neale Hurston at the time. So she came and did this presentation at a place called the Learning Center at the Senior Citizens Incorporated organization, and had a nice little crowd. And we were told that it was one of the most diverse crowds they've ever had, or at least for this series. So I'm
always you and I are always about diversity. So that was very pleasant to hear. But it was good just to talk. It's a real honor to be able to talk about one of your idols, one of the people who turned me into the direction of saying that I could really write about the South and still let it be literature. I wrote about small towns, and I hadn't read about that before. So she continues to be instrumental, in my life. Absolutely. But I'm not the only one. What about you? What about you in your busy life?
Well, because you were here last week, and then a few days ago, another Spelman friend, Dr. Donna Akiba Sullivan Harper, who was she is Professor Emerita of English at Spelman, and she came in the week behind you, and she did a session. What?
Can I say something about her?
Well, let me just tell what she talked. She talked about Langston Hughes, and she did another wonderful presentation. Again, a good crowd. And so I've just been sort of bathing in all these historical authors for the past few weeks. Yes, ma'am. What you got to say?
I was just going to say that Dr. Harper is dear to my heart because she was she retired as the chair of the English department. She retired after being the chair of the English department at Spelman, and she was the professor who created the syllabus and the curriculum for the class. She created it at Spelman, the novels of Tina McElroy, Ansa, Pearl Clegg, and now they've added to Yari Jones. And the thing, she created this without any help. She just presented it to me and Pearl. It was just the two of us there. And it was the most beautiful thing in the world to see your work, in the syllabus, respected and questions asked of her. So I have to give a nod to Dr. Donna Akiba Harper for what she did there. It was really, really, really touching.
Well, this was my first time meeting her in person. We've been social media friends for a while. And so, we went to dinner and we got to know each other pretty well. And so I had a nice time. And then I had one more thing happen this week. I have a friend, her name is Nita, and she's just this wonderful, wonderful cook. She used to own 2 restaurants, and she had a group of folks come from a magazine that they were doing a Southern cooking series, I guess. And they asked her to cook the iconic shrimp and grits, which is very iconic in Savannah and throughout the Beachy Gullah community. And so she asked if she could do it in my kitchen. And so yesterday they were in there cooking shrimp and grits, and they had a good time doing that. So just a lot of little stuff going on that just, keeps us on our toes.
Well, Wanda, that's, really Wanda has a beautiful kitchen and it's really well laid out. As I say, I know Wanda's kitchen as well as I know my own. Somebody will ask for something, I'll go, they keep the paper towels over there in the cabinet. So Wanda, as you can see, has allowed me into her home and let me make it my home. But her kitchen is comfortable. As a matter of fact, the kitchen table is where we took the picture for two old chicks who,
Right.
we won't bring that up, for somebody who took that picture who wants $25 every time I see him.
That would be my husband, and he says we never paid him for taking the picture, which he took with my phone, my camera.
and we haven't heard the last of them since. Well, I have one other thing this is very exciting for me, and that is that at the end of April, I was honored to co-host the committee for a fundraiser here on St. Simon's Island for our Spelman sister, our friend, and the next governor of the great state of Georgia, Stacey Abrams. Yay! That was a beautiful fundraiser for, gosh, they raised a good amount of money. A lot of people were there. I saw people who were friends and I went, oh God, they're Stacey Abrams. Oh, we can still be friends. They're Stacey Abrams fans. So that was a huge honor. And I gave her
what did you wear, Tina?
I wore my Shelby and Carrie wedding dress, Wanda's daughter's wedding. Wanda's daughters / my wedding dress that I wore there, which I love. Is one of my favorite party dresses. So I get to put on a pretty dress, and I get picked up. They're gonna pick me up. They picked me up and took care of me and brought me back home. And so it was a lovely evening, and it was for Stacey Abrams. I was really proud of that. I gave her your best, Wanda. I did.
Oh, I sure hope you extended an invitation to be on our podcast.
You better believe it. Hey, what you old chicks? We do know a little something.
Okay,
don't. A lot of shit.
I just want to be sure. I just want to be sure. Okay.
Well, May, as you may know, is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we don't like to follow, all the months that are there, but we thought this was a very important one. As you've been following the podcast, you know that Wanda and I are very concerned about self-care, taking care of ourselves, and we like to encourage other people and encourage other people to come on our show to talk about mental health, especially experts. So this time we have with us an expert on mental health and healing, which I think is what's a big part of it. I love that that's such a part of her practice. We have with us another Spelman sister, Dr. Kimani Norrington-Sands, also known as Dr. Kimani. She's a Spelman grad, as I said, which makes her smart and caring. Class of 93, I do believe. And she is one of my newer little schoolgirls. I have to tell you, she took correction and direction, which was a little strong, very well from me. And she came back for more. So that's how I know she's my little schoolgirl. And so she was one of the first people I thought about when Wanda and I were talking about having a conversation about mental health, not because it's Mental Health Month, because it's Mental Health Awareness Month every month. So I say to my Spelman sister, welcome.
Hey, Dr. Kimani. Welcome, my Spelman sister.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Good.
We're happy to have you. Well, before we get started, Wanda, I'm going to read just a little bit, and I am reading this because I want people to know Dr. K's. I like Dr. K as much as I like Dr. Kimani.
Oh, can we call you that? Is that okay?
That's fine. That works.
Call you Dr. K. Oh,
absolutely.
That feels good. Okay, Dr. K, also known as Dr. Kimani, is a licensed clinical psychologist in California. She focuses on supporting individual and collective healing so that clients can live a fulfilled life. Dr. Kimani draws upon her healing journey as well as her professional work to provide a range of services, including manifesting coaching, as well as Butterfly Landing. It's a book that she's also written, and it's for a journey. it's an aid, it's a journey for Black girls who've experienced sexual abuse. And again, on their road to healing. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. K.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with my Spelman sisters.
Great.
Great. Well, we're going to jump right into it because our segment is called, is there still a stigma in African-American families about getting mental health? Or is that changing? We always want to know what's happening. Wanda and I always have our own opinions, but we have our own groups. We like to read outside our groups, but we have our own opinions from our own generation. So we really kind of want to know, when we were growing up, I know that, it was not done, number one. And if it was talked about, behind the hand.
Right.
And it was not encouraged. It was not encouraged. Don't go out of this house talking about.
Exactly.
I wrote my memoir, Coming Full Circle from Jim Crow to Journalism, and I even had a little piece in there about a couple of people in my neighborhood who would sort of shuffle down the street and talk to themselves and hit their heads, and everybody would just go, "Oh, that's just Pookie or somebody. He's just crazy." Everybody knows he's crazy, and nobody really did anything to. I don't even know if we had the resources at that time back in the 60s and 70s to help people. And so nobody really thought about getting mental health care for them, taking them to a doctor, taking them to a mental health facility, unless they got in trouble. And then, of course, the police would take them. So I hope that is changing. So tell us about whether that stigma is still there.
Yes. So first I need to give just a contextual understanding of mental health within the Black community. And as you already said, because we as Black people have gone through so much, the stigma is also, I don't want people to look at us in a negative light, right? So when things are going wrong, people don't want to admit to that. The other thing is that there's a historical mistrust of systems, because systemic racism is within all of our systems. So sometimes we have, sought medical treatment or other things, and we've received negative treatment. So then that's another reason why we might pull back and not want to get that support. And then when you think about families, many times our families and our parents are seen in a less ideal light. And so there's a perception that if I go for mental health treatment, there's a sense of judgment that I'm not a good mother, I'm not a good father, right? Or might they call Child Protective Services and take my child from me, even though I haven't been doing anything, right? And so there's we have
that ingrained fear that's in our genes,
Yes, absolutely. And then we live in an environment where we're constantly, I call it, we're hyper visible in terms of people are looking at everything we're doing, right? But then when we need recognition or want the recognition, we're invisible. And so we're living like this way of being, which makes it difficult for Black people. And so for many years, there has been the stigma of mental health. And let's just say you did go for mental health treatment, many times the person didn't look like you. The therapist did not look like you. And so there was this issue of, this person doesn't understand my experience. This person is asking me all my business, the first setting, like the first meeting. I don't know this person. And so there's no development of relationship. And we know that we are relational people. And so mental health, as it has been very much dominated in terms of European ways of thinking, European values. And so in terms of our community healing,
Can I stop you a minute? When you say, what do you mean by European values and European ways of doing?
Yes.
So, as opposed to what we would do.
Exactly. So when you come in for a mental health appointment, the expectation is you come in and the person starts asking you very personal questions, right? Without a development of relationship. And we know, again, we are about trust as Black people. So we're kind of reading you first, like, can I trust you? Right? I'm not going to tell y'all my business. I don't even know you first. So that part. And then the interventions that we have all been taught have been based upon white models, right? So they've been studied on white people. They have not been studied on Black people. So what we've seen with a lot of the mental health interventions is that they try to adapt it for Black people or other people, but it's not culturally grounded. And so when you adapt something, it loses a flavor, right?
I just want to ask you also, you were talking about they don't look like you. Is that something that you should do when looking for a mental health professional? I mean, somebody you're comfortable with?
If
I mean,
you
is
can
that
find them,
what-
right? Dr. K, if you can find someone.
Yes, and that's the struggle, is that there's not enough of us out there, right? So I think maybe about 8 or 9% of social workers are Black, maybe 2 to 4% of psychologists are Black, and maybe 2% of psychiatrists. Yeah. So there's not that many of us out there. And so what we've seen in terms of the trend, right? So what we're seeing is that there's this generational shift that's happened. So a lot of times the younger generation, I'll say like the millennials, they're all about getting mental health, right? Because mental health is something that's talked about a lot. And they're like, I need to go see my therapist. My friend said I should go see a therapist. So it's not as stigmatizing as the older generations. However, since COVID, what many of us have seen is that there's a shift in terms of thoughts about mental health, because we've been experiencing collective trauma at this point. So now there's this increased attention to mental health. So a lot of the stigma about mental health has decreased since this COVID time.
I love what you say about the older generation. And I really want to ask a question with the perspective of my career, because I was in my career for 45 years. And because we're African-American, and because of all this term that we now call microaggressions, I didn't really hear that early on in my career, but there were so many microaggressions about, us not being good enough, not having the right kind of perhaps education or experience, not having the depth of knowledge about something, even though we studied it, we know we did. And
we didn't get it, we studied it.
Yeah. And so those colleagues of mine who were white were always talking about, I got to go see my therapist. I got a regular appointment to see my therapist. I got, this happened. I'm going through a divorce. I'm going to go see my therapist. My child is sick. My child's teacher is getting on my nerve. I mean, whatever happened, they were always going. And I don't recall any Black person in my career in the early years, the first 20, 30 years, ever say, I'm going to go see my therapist. And they were saying it to me because I was a manager, and they were like saying, I need time off. Just like I might go to the doctor to get, a dermatology appointment or something, or got a cold. They were going to see their therapist. So that was time off. And, medical time, they were taking their sick leave for that. So
Wanda, I have to say, you were talking about that generation. I'm the example that proves, I'm the exception that proves the rule.
You are.
I looked for a therapist in my 20s. This was in the 70s, the mid 70s, and it was unheard of. And in my family, it wasn't like, don't go. It was like, what is this? Why did you decide to go? Why couldn't you?
So the rest of my question.
And in the newsroom, and the thing, I mean, I was like really kind of trying to keep it on the down low, and I remember, when I had to go down to, do my interview to see if I really had to go, I didn't tell anybody that I was doing this. And this was in the mid 70s. So people were going, not the way that your colleagues were going, but we were kind of sneaking. We were kind of sneaking off to the film.
But I would imagine that because there are so few therapists and counselors that are African-American, the first thing we would have had to admit is that we were going through these microaggressions and even explain what they are, because our white colleagues, we never talked about them at work. And so our white colleagues didn't even realize that we were suffering from this. We talked to each other.
Right.
We had.
And that speaks to many times as Black people, we're focused very much on survival issues, right? So how do we survive in our communities? How do we survive in terms of getting enough resources? How do we survive in the workplace with microaggressions? So we're on a different level, right? And so many times we don't have the luxury to think about getting extra support. And we have to think about the financial resources, because therapy is expensive. So if you don't know I don't even know where to go to get therapy, right? Number one. Right. Number two, I don't want to go to a therapist who doesn't understand me, who doesn't understand my cultural background. And three, it's so expensive. So you have all these barriers that are in the way. And when we think about culturally, many times a church has been where we first go when we start having some challenges, right? So we go to family, friends, church. And so we tried that, and we try to pray it away. We try to talk to our friends, but sometimes we need additional support. And what we might encounter in terms of, Tina, you were saying not being open about going to therapy, because there can be a lot of backlash in terms of, well, you didn't pray it away. You're not a good Christian. You need to keep, right? And just having the understanding that there's one thing in terms of spirituality, which is a cultural form of healing from us, but sometimes we need more. We need a trained mental health professional. And just because we see a therapist, that does not mean that we don't believe in God or believe in a higher power.
Wednesday used to be my therapy day, girl, and I would look forward to Wednesday. Wednesday was always also payday, but my therapy was a lot more important at that time. At that time, and I had a woman therapist because I couldn't find a male therapist in Atlanta, black therapist in Atlanta, female or male. And I think there was one male, but I just didn't want to go to a male. I felt more comfortable going to a white female, but she helped me. But again, you're right. I had to explain things to her. She didn't get me right off the bat. She didn't. She hadn't had her hair straightened on Saturday night before
church
on Sunday. Yeah. Well, okay. This is a good next point. How does one find if one thinks if you think you need some help, what do you do? That's the question. What do you do? If somebody tells you, hey, sweetie, you may want to, think about getting some therapy, then what do you do?
Which, by the way, Tina does all the time to her friends, which is a good thing.
Because that's good. She's a mental health advocate. That's great. Yeah. So the first thing is you have to be okay with it yourself, right? And sit with yourself and say, is this the life that I want to live for myself? And if not, what needs to happen to help me through that process? So that is the initial step, right? In terms of seeking therapy. And so when you think about therapy, if you have insurance, you can go to your mental health, you can go to your insurance carrier because they have mental health coverage, right? And so you can ask your insurance carrier, you can be very direct. I want a Black female therapist. Give me a referral for Black female therapists, right? And then they give you a list of referrals. And so that's one option. Another option we have different resource directories. So there's Psychology Today, which has a lot of different therapists throughout the country. You just put in your zip code. They have videos. You can actually see the therapist talking and you can read their information. And then we have Therapy for Black Girls. We have the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation. And you can even Google Black therapists near me. Right? Really? So there's a lot of different options for you to find a therapist. Even though there's not enough of us, there are a lot of us. And especially during COVID, a lot more of us have been in private practice to really serve the needs of our people because we know that we're hurting. We're really hurting.
What is your experience in terms of race? Like a lot of Black people obviously go to white therapists because there are so few Black. Do Black therapists by and large treat white patients?
I can't speak to that because all of my patients are Black.
Okay.
And what I found is that Black clients or those who are seeking services will say to me, I sought you out because you're a Black woman, right? Or I looked at your profile and it really relates to how right? Or they might have said, I was in therapy before with someone who doesn't look like us. And it wasn't a good connection. So yes, we can treat other ethnicities and races. However, all of my clients are Black, and I just feel like that's my calling in terms of why I became a psychologist in the first place, is to help heal Black people. And so I feel like I'm walking in terms of my calling. But yeah, some people particularly in terms of if you're interested in certain areas, in terms of mental health, you might serve a wider range of people, but mine is more focused on helping healing for Black people.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're there for your clients.
Thank you.
And therefore, for potential clients, people who are looking for somebody, who look like you. Well, before this has been very informative. I knew you would give us some really good advice about moving forward and healing, because I know healing is your wheelhouse. Well, before we let you go, can you tell us a little bit about your lifting as you climb?
Yes.
the things that you're passionate about. I know that healing
Absolutely.
is one of them, and I know that healing for Black women, especially who are survivors of sexual abuse.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, first I have to say that attending Spelman has been for me a foundational part of who I am, right? So that sense of knowing myself as a woman, knowing myself as a Black woman, and a Black woman of worth. And I remember during my graduation, Oprah Winfrey was a graduation speaker, and she said, you know, people will try to treat you like a slave girl, but you remember you're always a queen girl, right? And so throughout life, I've always remembered that, because as we go out in the world, people always question us, right? And they always try to belittle us. But when we know our worth and we stand up for it, then that helps us feel a sense of security and like, who are you talking to? Like, I know what I'm coming to the table with. And so that experience, and also the sisterhood of Spelman, you know, has really resonated so deeply with me, because I truly believe that as Black people, we cannot liberate if only one person's doing well, right? So we have to lift as we move forward, right? And lifting as we climb, which is actually something that I learned about at Spelman with the National Council of Negro Women in terms of their motto. And so that has been the way I function, just personally and professionally, is that if you're moving forward and you're healing, reach back to someone else who's struggling and help them heal as well, because we're trying to heal our community. It's not good enough to heal one or two people. We need to heal our community, and healing is an ongoing process. So we need to continue to do that.
Dude, drop some wisdom, Dr.
Girl,
K.
that was some serious wisdom.
Wasn't it though?
Yeah,
Wonderful. I'm
yeah.
glad we're recording.
Yeah. Well,
I was about to take notes, but I want to repeat one thing that you said is so powerful. Ask yourself, is this the life you want to be living? Is that what you said? Wow.
Essentially, yes. Because we have to think about what our ancestors had to go through for us to be here right now. Okay. And so when I think about that, and you know, again, at Spelman, that was so highly emphasized. So when I think about what our ancestors had to go through, and I think about what I had to go through personally to get to where I went, where I am in terms of my own healing journey and things like that, I owe it to myself to live my best life. And so I owe it to my ancestors to live my best life, because they paid so much for me to be here. And so given that, I want to live a life that is fulfilling for me, and I want to help other people have fulfilled life. And if they can use me by example, I'm all good with that. You know, I share about my personal struggles. I talk about my healing journey, because I want people to know that healing is possible, and they can see in terms of what I've gone through that I've healed. And not only am I healing, and I'm not totally healed, I'm healing, but I'm also helping other people heal as well.
Great. Well, Dr. K, I want to thank you so. Yes, Tina.
I was just going to say, one of my readings recently was that the best thing that you can do for anybody is be a shining example.
Yes.
Which is true.
Yes.
True.
Well, I want to thank you. You have really given us a lot to think about. And I want to say also that I think one of the messages you're leaving us with for our listeners is we need more of you, people like you, more African Americans in this field. So I hope that people who are listening are passing this along to their children and their grandchildren, so that as they think about what they're going to do when they go to college and graduate school, they recognize that there is this need, that we need more people who are therapists. And so that's one of the biggest messages that I think we could have gotten out of this today.
Yes.
So thank you so much. And tell me, what city are you in?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay, so just for our listeners to know where you are. So thank you so much. It was wonderful meeting you. I'm sure I'm going to see you more and more on again and again on social media, and folks can reach out to you there. We'll have your name on our podcast so people will know who you are. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. Thank
you, Dr. K.
Thank
Talk
you.
Later.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Well, Tina, it's time for us to drop some wisdom, as if we didn't have some big wisdom already dropped in this podcast.
Exactly. Our guest just dropped some really wonderful wisdom. So we're loaded down with wisdom today,
We
but you
sure
can't have
are.
too much. Can't
Yeah.
have too much. Yeah. What about you? What's your wisdom?
Well, my wisdom really is think big. And I think we may have talked about this once on the podcast before, but I wanted to come back to it because a couple of things have happened in the past few days. One of them is that you and I are planning something really big, and we thought it was big, and we're not going to tell everybody what it is. It's something that you'll hear more
We gotta
about.
work on it a little more.
We're going to work on it a little more, but we were planning this, and then we started meeting with some other people to sort of help us plan it. And oh my gosh, the big became bigger and bigger and bigger. And it just said to us, we really weren't thinking big. And so when we often say in business, think outside the box. Well, the box got blown up a few days ago when we started doing it.
It sure did.
And I didn't really think of it in that way until I was on a session. I'm in a group called Journalisms Roundtable. Richard Prince, a journalist, has this wonderful monthly session where people come on Zoom and they talk about their expertise. And one of the guests,
I've joined you.
You have. And in fact, I'm not sure if we talked about our book Meeting at the Table, but you have been on there. But excuse me, one of the guests is a guy named Terrell Starr, and some of our listeners may recognize him because he lives in Ukraine and he's covering Ukraine as a journalist and a Black guy. And he just happened to be in the States for a little while. And because, even no matter how much you cover war, you got to come back, come in from the cold every now and then and kind of regroup. He was talking about thinking big in terms of his own brand. He talked about how he used to work for a news organization, and he thought that was a really good job. But then when he went independent as a freelancer or a correspondent who gets
stories from Ukraine.
Yes,
from actually being there.
People had questions about, well, how do you do this? How do you go out on your own? How do you know you have what it takes? How do you make money? How do you keep track of the expenses when you're out there, covering a war? But he talked about, you got to think big. And I thought big of myself. I knew that I had a personal brand and that I'm worth what I'm asking for. And so when I started hearing him talk about thinking big, and I thought about some of the things that you and I have been involved in the last few days, I just want to say to our listeners, y'all need to think big, because there's a lot of help out there to do a lot of stuff. And we are valuable. We bring value. We all have some value no matter what we do. So think big, don't think small, because you can go farther if you think big.
And if you think you're thinking big, then think bigger.
Bigger.
If you think you're thinking big, there's still a whole.
That's right. There's a whole nother level. It keeps going up.
That's what that's what I learned. I thought I was thinking big, but I got my lessons, and I learned it very well. Yeah, right. That was a good lesson, Wanda.
Yeah. So what's your wisdom?
Well, it's funny you should say that. Perhaps we've said this before, because I was going to say the same thing about this. I know that you have said this. This has been your wisdom before, but it hit me recently, and that is, I have a friend. I have a never seen friend. She's a friend of a friend, and she made me that beautiful African fabric dress that I think that we talked about, and maybe had pictures of. Never seen me in her life, but we really liked each other. When we met over the phone and talking, and talking about her grandkids and all the rest. And she used to be she was one of the few Black railroad conductors. Before she retired to Louisiana, which is her home. But at any rate, she made me this beautiful dress, and then she followed up. Never seen her face. We just talked on the phone, just text. And then she made me these two one-of-a-kind jewelry, beautiful. I'm wearing it. Beautiful necklace and bracelet. Well, I was looking at it, and of course, I was, oh God, I'm going to wear one is sparkly and one is golden, and I just want to wear. Let's see, when I go to so and so, when I go to, and I was doing errands the other day, about 3 days ago, and I looked down. I had on a pair of shorts, which is probably too short for me, but at any rate, I had on a pair of shorts and a shirt, and I looked down, and I had on my good bracelet. I didn't even remember putting it on, Wanda. I didn't have on the necklace, but I had on the bracelet along with my other, bracelets that I wear. And it dawned on me, oh, Tina, you're not saving your stuff. Isn't that wonderful? I mean, I didn't have to even, chastise myself about it. And I can't say it enough. Don't save your good stuff for later. Number one, it's all good stuff. If you have it and you bought it, don't save it for later. Don't save it for when you get engaged. Don't save it for that for that time that you walk across the stage and get your diploma. Don't save it for that. Because I've learned that, like I said, there's no later. Everything is now, and there's no good stuff. Everything is good stuff.
That's right. That's right. Excuse me. Excuse me, I've still got this little cough from when I had
I
COVID.
know she has a little cough. You've done very well tonight. You did really good.
But I just wanted to add to that I have a single strand of pearls. I don't have them on tonight, but a single strand of pearls that my husband gave me, I think, on our second Christmas, and I still wear them. But I will tell you that every time I wear those pearls, sometimes I'll put them on with a t-shirt and go through the drive-in window to get a meal or to the bank, or go in the grocery store. And whenever I do, people say, oh, you look so nice.
They do.
And that just kind of makes the outfit. And I'm not even trying. I'm like you. I might have on some Bermuda shorts and a t-shirt, a pretty colored t-shirt. And so those good things really make you feel special. So
they make you feel good. That's why you call them good. They make you feel good. And I've seen people, admire their jewelry, and then go put on something else. Like, well, wait a minute, you aren't these, no, those are mother pearls, and I don't, your mother wants you to wear the pearls. Yes. Wear the pearls. You're our example.
Yeah,
that's a good wisdom. Both of those were good wisdoms. Oldies but goodies. Kind of like us.
Yeah. Hey.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's it for this episode of Two Old Chicks. We want to thank you for joining us. And just a reminder, we read all your comments, and we almost always comment if you comment or share something with us. So please continue to send us your feedback on social media. We love it.
Yeah, this is gardening time, Wanda, for you and for me. So if anybody wants to share some pretty pictures of their garden with the story, we'd be happy to receive those and see how we might be able to use them on the podcast. So help us expand our audience by telling others about Two Old Chicks. If you've laughed along with us and enjoyed it, then, tell your friends to listen in. Also, be sure you're following us on Two Old Chicks on Spotify and YouTube. And, until next time, peace and love.
Bye-bye, everybody. Love, love.